Hey there, you're either watching or listening to The Climb. My name is John Sarakis, and this is brought to you by the Digital Mastermind. First announcement, tickets are now available, but they won't be available for long for our summit in October from the 17th, 18th, and 19th. It's the Digital Mastermind Owners Summit. It is something you do not want to miss, and if you haven't been yet, you need to hurry and buy your tickets at digitalmastermind.com. All right, so today I'd like to talk about many things, but the first one is history, and history repeats itself. And the good news to that is business is about to get a hell of a lot harder to come by. And why is that good news? It's good news because the people that don't try nearly as hard as you do aren't going to get the business that you deserve to get. And how do you get that? By looking at history. All the tried and true things that are out there of the way to get customers, going back to, let's say, direct mail, which dominated for, I don't know, I'm going to throw out some figures, maybe 50 or 60 years before the advent of email. And now email is something that you can take advantage of. And I'm sure there's social media and all these other channels. But the point I'm trying to make is if you double down on the hardcore basics, the things that are simple to do and simple to repeat and simple to test, you can get extraordinary results. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring out Dave, but I'm going to announce our guest that I interviewed. His name is Philippe Kwiatkowski. And I hope I said his name right. If not, I'm gonna have to go back and edit. But anyway, he's has a fantastic program that is for cold email. So Dave, why don't you come out here real quick?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, it's going well. So history repeating itself. I mean, that's what I talked about in the monologue. I mean, the essential here is cold email and ways to get business. But in that, we could both agree on that let's say the business climate is going to get tougher. But I look at that as potentially a silver lining because it means you can get better business. You can beat out your competitors. It can show where we really shine. Where has this happened? In your opinion, where we get to like steal a lot of things, that potentially happened in another time period that we get to look at and take now?
Well, I think face-to-face networking is always tried and true. You talk about, history, you look at the tried and true tactics, handshakes, networking is always great. Direct mail, I don't know if that's, I don't know if that's coming back. I don't look at my mail like that, but my wife does. So I guess it depends on your audience.
Yeah. The B2C. And what I meant by the direct mail is that is something that worked for like 50 to 60 years, but that's
right.
what cold email is now. You either do it in a shitty fashion or you can do it in a really good way.
I mean, I'm reminded, I reached out to a vendor this week, and so I am a cold, I guess what, I'm a cold lead. I found them, I'm looking to buy a service. And, it took them over a day for the first response. And then I said, all right, great. Let's meet. I want to find out about your service. Here's 3 days. It took 4 days to get a response from that. And I just sat there and I went, man, if I'm not a priority, then you don't want some business right now. And it's just shocking to me. And so it's kind of like, if you're not doing the basics, if you're not nailing the basics, then kiss your ass goodbye in this economy.
Oh yeah, flawlessly execute the basics. I agree. What I call that is a sales prevention department.
Right.
And so many companies have a sales prevention department, whether it's their inability to quote on time or accurately or getting back. Yeah, when a lead comes in, priority is like, or I'm sorry, if you get you can get to it within 5 minutes, like, all right, you're at the standard. That's where it should be. Anything less than that, your ability to connect with them is just going to continually dissipate.
Right. Because also when I'm in this situation, when I'm contacting vendors, I'm also contacting other vendors.
So right. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. Who gets back to you the quickest is going to get the business. But all right. So you contacting this vendor, like, what does it reflect based on their ability to get back to you outside of just contacting other vendors? What does it make you think of the company?
I assume they're not going to be responsive when I need them.
Right.
So responsive is one of our core values. I mean, frustration starts to mount when somebody's not responsive. And if I'm in a situation where I need things happening, then I expect the people that I'm working with to also feel that. And that tells me they're not going to feel that if I run into a situation.
And there's so many things about like the initial touch in sale is that it was a reflection of the business throughout, right? And even on the marketing side, there was a study done by Stanford I used to use all the time when selling websites, but I think it was in 2004. In any event, they said based on the design of your website or your material is also going to give people the impression of how your service or product performs, right? So shitty design, shitty service.
Right.
And it's the same thing here, right? So based on that interaction, you believe like, okay, well, this is how they're going to respond throughout because it's a reflection of their culture and the way that they go about whatever it is that they do. And I don't think enough people realize the easiest way to really close is just by having a solid sales process and you set up everything throughout, but good clients, so on and so forth.
And not only that, like things might come up where it's going to take you 4 days to get back to me, but you better reference that in your response. Say, hey, sorry for taking so long to get back to you. I was on vacation. I was out of the office. I was blah, 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 you know.
Or we've been inundated. You're one of 50, pal.
Right. So, but they didn't even reference that. They were just like, okay, yeah, those times look good. And I'm like, whoa, you took 4 days to say sure. You know, so yeah, that was tough. So, I mean, we're heading to I foresee a bleaker economy than you do. I know we have some DMG members that think the economy is just the greatest thing ever.
That's a booming.
But I think we're in an inflation cycle that we've never seen, and it's going to get tough. People haven't seen this kind of business environment, and you better be executing those basics flawlessly.
I agree, and I think it's one of those weird things that, for instance, I was talking with a friend the other day, and there's this doctor that he's written some books, he's got a podcast and whatnot. I said, and he had a similar problem. I'm not going to get into it. And I said, well, you should contact this doctor. And he said, no, he's like, everybody else is probably contacting him. I was like, yeah, that's why you should contact him, because every other person is thinking the exact same way as you are. Like and it's the same thing here. So many people will just get at this herd mentality. And when I hear that the economy is going to be bad or something, I get a little bit excited because when I first started it was tough, dude. It was so tough. 2008, 2009, 2010, dude, like so much competition, just going against everybody. But to me, that's a little bit exciting because all these people, because I see these businesses that have gotten all these awards that started in like 2012, 2013, 2014. It's like, yeah, that's when times were really good, right? Now times are really tough. And it's like, okay, all right, what can you do? What is the distance you are willing to go to be able to perform to the clients and customers you made a promise to? What are you willing to do to get that business?
In this economic cycle, I want to see if open book management survives. Seriously. I've always said, yeah, open book management, great as long as things are good. Wait until some bad numbers start hitting those open books.
This is going to kill it, right? Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe it's the time to write the book, CBM, closed book management.
Right. Only know what you need to know management.
But I mean, on that note, I'd like to bring out our guest, Philippe, and talk about cold email, talk about his climb. And remember, go ahead and get your tickets at digitalmastermind.com for our annual summit. Thank you so much for listening. Go ahead and like, share, comment, do whatever it is you would like to do with the show. And go ahead and shoot me an email if you want to be a guest or have something to talk about. John@digitalmastermind.com. Thank you so much. Have some fun. Bye now. Philip, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, John, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Great to have you here, buddy. Appreciate you making the time. So I'd like to start out with your climb. How did you get here?
Well, how did I get here? So I started Yubico. I started the company I'm working on while I was in university. So I was studying computer science. I had always been really into programming, had always worked on various side projects that led to nowhere, and had always been working with small businesses, startups. And while I was in university, I was part of this accelerator program. So there was a bunch of founders that wanted to build, they wanted to turn their ideas into businesses. And so I had worked part of that. I was part of the team that actually built the environment to foster them, to provide them resources. And the most common thing that I realized, the most common pain point all these founders had was really just getting good distribution. Building an MVP, building a product is step one, but then step two is to actually sell the product, to get customers. And so all these founders, their common pain point was, how do I get in touch with my potential customers? How do I get in touch with my potential users? So I was like, okay, let me prototype a little cold email tool, because many of these startups were B2B. And the cold email tool, what it did is it found prospects, it found potential customers, and sent them emails. And it worked really well for these founders. So much so that someone asked me, how much does this cost? And that question actually prompted me to start the company. I then dropped out of school, dropped out of university.
Yeah, who needs
and
school?
Then have been doing this since for 4 years now.
Got it. So it wasn't a mistake dropping out of school. This seems like it was a good idea.
No, it wasn't a mistake. I think honestly, when you're studying computer science, it's easier to drop out, but I don't want lawyers and doctors to be dropping out of school. So I think it really depends, what field you're in. But in IT and software development, it's easier to drop out.
Yeah. So there's a ton of like cold email tools. There's a lot of like cold email outreach that's going on in there. And the purpose of this podcast isn't necessarily to sell your product, but I'd like to know is like, how are you different? Like what
Yeah.
you picking up what I'm putting down? Like, yeah, just it's a crowded space.
Yeah, it is a crowded space. There's a lot of competitors. So we combine a bunch of different tools, not just the emailing part, but then there's all these prospecting tools that usually sales teams, usually they're called sales development reps, BDRs, SDRs. And what they're really doing is they're spending their time clicking on LinkedIn profiles. They're trying to find data, contact data on the web. And what we do is we simplify that entire process. We automate a lot of that manual work, so that they can focus on just talking to leads that are interested, leads that express some interest. So we cover the sales intelligence piece plus the email outreach. And the result of that, because we cover both, the result of that is our system using AI can categorize the responses that they get from these leads. So if leads are saying, hey, I'm interested, or they're saying I'm not interested, that's actually useful information for our system to optimize the entire process. Mm-hmm. So in advertising, this is called lookalike audiences, and it's called also having conversion goals set up. So similar, there's no tech that exists for B2B cold email, and so we're providing that capability so that they can just have a system that finds them leads that resemble their best customers.
Got it. So agencies are hit up like every single day with like tons of, dude, the amount of cold email I get per day. And I actually save them like, oh, that's a good one. Maybe I'll use that one in one of my campaigns. So like, oh, this one's really terrible. I'm going to hold on to this and use this one as an example. So like, let's say an agency starts today, like how long until they actually get something bona fide, like coming through the door? Like, what does that cycle look like?
Okay, so half of our customer base are B2B agencies.
Yep.
And some of our agency customers, 50% of their new business comes from Yubico. So it flows through our system. And these are typically agency owners that have that same perception as you, as cold emails don't work on me, so how could it work for my business? Mm-hmm. It really depends on your contract. So your annual contract size. So obviously if you're selling services that are $100,000 plus, it's going to be a lot more personalized, and it's going to be more amount of touch points over a longer period of time. But I see a lot of successful agencies productizing their service. So let's say we have one customer that's a development agency, and they sell $100,000 plus contracts, but it was difficult for them to build a consistent pipeline. So because they weren't able to build a consistent pipeline, because the sales process was so high touch, their sales growth was very volatile. So what they decided to do was to put together a smaller package, CTO on demand, so something that's worth $10,000. And that was an easier way for them to use a digital channel like email to acquire leads and acquire customers at a lower price point. And from there, they can upsell to the larger contract. So it does maybe sometimes require a bit of changes in your business model to make customer acquisition work. But it at the end of the day, agency or
so I want to jump back
business.
to that real quick. So you have, let's say that the CTO on demand. That what I find is interesting there. Were they trying to sell like $100,000 contracts via email, and now they're selling $10,000 contracts via email? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so they test both. It just they get to results faster, to conversions faster when the price point is lower, because the sales cycle is faster, right?
Got
So
it.
they want to find their ideal customer profile, and the way we define it is, fastest, highest intensity of pain point, fastest sales cycle, so speed to close, and then highest revenue potential. If you can find the ideal sweet spot with those three variables, then you found your
Repeat those three variables one more time.
So it's highest intensity of pain point,
Okay.
fastest close rate,
Mm-hmm.
and highest revenue potential.
That's the trifecta that you want in alignment if you want a successful cold email campaign.
Exactly.
Got it. So I think that's a big takeaway for our audience. Do you have any other examples that you can share other than this CTO, like any other agency that use that trifecta?
To make email work, you need good data. So you need what we call intent data. So I'll give you an example. If you're an SEO agency selling SEO services, instead of reaching out to a generic profile like B2B software companies, why not reach out to companies that are hiring SEO specialists? Because if they're hiring an SEO specialist, it means internally they have a budget, they have a need, the timeline is now because they're hiring someone now. So it's very relevant for you to reach out to them and actually in the email copy reference that, hey, I saw you guys are hiring an SEO specialist. Would you we're experts at SEO. Would you consider a conversation with us because we're really good at this? So our customers see a huge jump in conversion rates because they're targeting companies that actually have that need. And so when a company posts a job posting, that's one example of intent data.
Got it. Okay. What are some other examples, if you can provide any?
Yes, there's a long list of examples. New executive,
Okay.
new CMO, new
Yep.
executive usually means they want to bring in new relationships. They're open to new providers. That's one. Geographic expansion. So they're moving into a new region, a European company opening an office in the US. They may want to work with an agency locally. They probably do actually want to work with an agency that's local and understands the market. And technology tags called technographics. Company just recently implemented HubSpot. If they recently implemented HubSpot, maybe they need CRM services.
Yeah.
So you can figure a lot of these things out from technographics and other these are just data points to tell you that a company is growing. Because when a company is growing, they're investing. You actually don't want to reach out to companies that are going the opposite way, which is they're downsizing.
Yeah. Also, that somebody else needs to take that one away. And I call those trigger events, right?
Yeah.
So anytime there's a trigger event, let's say a company's moving offices, right? So that spurs a whole type of different salespeople. And I think one thing some people get in their head about is they won't contact because they're concerned everybody else is contacting. Well, you should look at that as everybody else is going to have that same mindset as you. So you should be the one that's contacting because you never know what's gonna turn away.
Exactly.
All right. So what, one of the things I love to talk about on the show is, the show's called The Climb. So what is one of the biggest challenges or obstacles you've overcome?
Right. Um, so the consistent challenge for us was always to do this bootstrap.
Mm,
So that was a consistent challenge. So we needed to figure out a way to create a business model that allowed us to charge customers upfront to fund essentially the development of the platform, because building an email automation platform seems easy, but it's like really complicated software. It's a whole different protocol. There's a lot of messy unstructured data. Building AI systems usually require you to label a ton of data, so it's very expensive. And so that was our biggest challenge to overcome, is how do we really self-fund through customer funding
mhm,
the development of the platform, um, while not, bootstrapping to death,
mhm.
essentially. How do we become default live? So that was the biggest challenge for us, is, yeah, how do we get the product market fit, with the least amount of resources and capital to get there.
Got it. And then what did you? I mean, what was the biggest mistake you made in that process?
So not prioritizing, um, not being relentless about prioritization, um, not choosing the right things to work on. So instead of talking to our customers more and interviewing them and seeing, um, what they would find value, and how do we test things quickly. Instead, we would sort of just, um, try to skate where the puck was going. We thought we were smarter than our customers,
Yeah.
and so we would build a lot of the wrong things that never got adopted. And so that was a huge waste of money and time. So yeah, so not prioritizing, not having a good framework in terms of our product management on
Mhm.
how to prioritize, our development.
So you said something key there. Listening to your customers. I imagine that agencies complain a lot. Like, what are the things that you hear? I mean, you work with probably a lot of different agencies, diverse. What are the things you continually hear from agencies that's unrealistic?
So yeah, blaming the tools instead of their process.
Hmm.
Um, like we work, our more, so we have B2B software companies that are some of the fastest growing companies in North America,
Hmm.
and they overinvest in training their sales reps, providing them with content, following, like, they have beautiful follow-up sequences in their CRM. They have a sales ops person dedicated to just stitch together all this data in these apps. And then the agency owner thinks that they send one email and it should convert. So their expectations for conversion are much higher when they've never really seen that whole world of sales ops and revenue ops. And so they typically underinvest in sales,
Mm.
because of how their business models are designed. They close these big contracts, and then it's like sales is up and to the right, but then they have these months where it drops back down, because they're not understanding that in order to grow your business, you always have to have consistency. You always have to have a consistent pipeline of new opportunities that are coming into your CRM in order for you to have that predictability in your growth. So that would be the biggest mistake, is they don't invest in their sales process.
Got it. You said so they hire a bunch of people and they think they got the razzle dazzle, but they have a weak process. Am I gathering that correctly?
Exactly. They're more of the, let's hire the superstar sales reps. And I tell them, don't hire the superstar sales rep, hire the process. Hire the C player that you can make an A player with your process, versus trying to find that A player with no process. Because if that A player leaves, then,
Yeah. What do you got? You got
it,
nothing.
you got nothing.
Yeah. No, I think that's solid. Now, with lost my train of thought for just a second. Insofar as like, okay, let's follow ups, right? So some people say you follow up once, some people say you follow up twice. Like, what is a solid email cadence look like for cold email in your opinion?
Yeah. So what we've seen work the best is 6 to 7 touch points in a 30-day period. So that's actually what leads to the highest, amount of responses. And in sales, you actually want to get people to say no. Like you,
Mhm.
you do want them to get to a decision. because then you can move on faster to the next opportunity. So from our data, we've seen 6 to 7 touch points in a 30-day period lead to the highest amount of responses.
Got it. Now, what about you have to deal with agencies that are just absolute generalists that just have the most garbage offers and then just the most garbage company to some extent. Not to sound like a negative person, but I see these. I'm like, there's no reason people should buy from you. Like, what do you do in those situations?
Yeah, that's a harder one. So we tell them, guys, like, start testing more. Start testing. Email is a really good way to test your messaging, your value proposition, your positioning statements, your target profile. And that's what we see is that the data tells the truth. If you have strong product market fit, you have a really good product, people will want to talk to you.
Yeah.
People will want to respond. They're like, okay, this is very relevant to my problem. Because don't forget, like, sales is not about being pushy. It's just about solving someone's problem. And then the agencies that are not differentiated, instead of viewing as, okay, the tool is the issue, it's probably because what you're offering is not very differentiated. People don't need what you're selling. So use this as feedback. And so the best agencies we see is they'll iterate. They'll iterate to where they get to a point what we call message market fit.
Mm-hmm.
And then they hit that message market fit, that right value prop to the right target profile. And then they start to see a lot of responses come in. But it takes testing. And email is a very cost-efficient way to test those assumptions versus, launching ads on LinkedIn that cost you like $50 a click. It's just more expensive to test there. So we tell them
there, like, how long is that testing period before somebody finds out where, the points that you mentioned, and how much does that usually cost?
So 60 days to test. And then how much it costs really depends on the plan they sign up for. So we have plans, that start at $130 a month, all the way to like $1,000 per month.
Got it. But DMG members get a special discount.
Exactly. So you guys get a healthy discount.
All right, I love it. We'll figure that out later. All right, my friend, is there anything that I have not covered here that you think the world should know?
I think people should pay attention to Web3. I know it's a big buzzword.
Let's do it. More about that.
Web3 is going to completely change marketing. I call it marketing 3.0. And in the world, all the internet businesses that we know that are mega successful have operated with an advertising model. But I think that the future really is that people will get paid for their attention. So instead of advertising companies like Google or Facebook, because when you think about it, you launch an ad campaign, you're paying the ad platform to get in touch, to get the attention of a consumer. I think Web3, what Web3 does is it cuts out that middleman, cuts out Google, Facebook, and instead people will be paid for their attention. So you as a business, if you want to get in touch with a consumer or a B2B buyer, you will actually pay them for their attention. You will pay them to respond, pay them to watch an ad. So there'll be a revenue share model with consumers, with buyers. So I think that's a really big trend to pay attention to. And there's
just happening now. Like, it reminds me of take this survey and we'll give you this, or take this quiz. Like, is anybody doing a decent job at this that you can see around the corner with?
Yes. So the biggest example of this is Brave, the privacy-focused browser. Mm-hmm. So they're competing with Google. So you install that browser. It's just like Google Chrome, but instead you can earn tokens. So you can earn some value by opting in to watch ads. So it's privacy-focused. So there's no tracking. There's no third-party cookie. By the way, the third-party cookie is becoming obsolete like next year. So that's going to change the dynamics a little bit. But Brave is an example of that. And consumers for the first time could actually earn tokens.
What do you do with the tokens?
So the tokens, you can, on a currency exchange, you can trade them for US dollar.
Is it like a crypto type of deal?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, It's just a way. It's a way for you to get value for your attention, essentially.
And how does this play into the metaverse?
Okay, these are loaded questions. I don't know.
I know, yeah.
Prepared for the metaverse
climb, baby.
The metaverse. I don't know about the metaverse. I think.
Are you a non-believer, Philip?
No, I'm a believer. So, 10 years ago, one of my first software projects was like a version of Second Life.
Oh, really?
On Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. And so we would have hundreds of users. So I was a big gamer, and this is my introduction to programming. And we had hundreds of users joining and playing a character. And there was a job system. People can get a job. They can earn money. They can purchase. Essentially, they can use US dollar to purchase in-game items. Right, kind of like the Fortnite model where you can buy a special gun or whatever. So this has been happening for 10 years. It's just, but this is Facebook's last attempt of staying relevant.
Yeah. So I look at this as two different ways. Where one part of me is saying like, okay, this is the new internet, right? There's going to be a land grab. We need to move in that direction. The other side of me is saying, this is like virtual reality when they released it in the 90s. Nobody really gave a damn, right? So where do you sit on that from an opinion standpoint?
Well, I think so. I mean, new innovations go through a adoption cycle. Sure. Just like AI started like 50 years ago and went through a bunch of like AI winters, as they called it. Now, finally, because there was a few elements in place, compute power, massive amount of data and information, and the techniques caught up. Because of those three things, machine learning actually became a thing. You can actually build useful applications. So that's the thing is crypto needs to be more than just I buy Bitcoin or Ethereum and I speculate and I want to get rich that way. So that's like the main way that people enter crypto. What it needs to be now is the Brave model, which is, can you let people earn crypto? Could they earn a cryptocurrency with their engagement, with their attention, with whatever? So there need to be more useful applications to see mass adoption. But we are seeing this now. It's still, if you look at the adoption curves, in terms of number of users, crypto, we're at the same place that the internet was in 1998. So it's exactly the same number. So you could think of crypto as the 1998 version of the internet.
Got it. All right. I like that comparison. All right, my friend, is there anything you would like to close with other than mentioning your company name, which we did at the top of the show, which is kind of rare. So kudos to you for doing that. But I'd like to know, is there anything you'd like to close with, and how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I love talking about this kind of stuff. So you can shoot me an email, phil@yubico.io. That's the best way to get in touch with me. We live in an interesting time. I know that the world is sort of chaotic today, but we do live in a time that there's just massive amount of opportunities. And I think especially marketing and sales, and it's just about to get a lot more interesting with new technologies like Web3. So I'm looking forward to all these new developments.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, John.
Hope you enjoyed our episode. Please subscribe and review wherever you can. And if you would like to join the Digital Mastermind, go ahead and shoot me an email at jon@digitalmastermind.com or visit us at digitalmastermind.com. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye now.